Welcome to World and Mind, the podcast where we explore the mind and the world in all their complexity. Together, we'll dive into personal growth, uncover new ideas, and share stories of motivation, useful insights, and diverse topics of interest. Whether you're seeking inspiration or practical knowledge, this is the place for you. Let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into the fascinating world of negotiation?
Absolutely. It's a skill that can be learned and honed, and the impact can be huge.
Totally agree. We've got a ton of interesting research to unpack today, some stuff that really surprised me, actually.
Oh, I bet. There are so many misconceptions about what it takes to be a good negotiator.
Right, like you picture those aggressive types who always need to dominate the conversation.
Yeah, but in reality, sometimes the most powerful tool in your arsenal is knowing when to just stop talking.
Silence. Really? That seems so counterintuitive. One of the articles we read actually touched on that, the power of silence in negotiation. But how does that actually work?
Well, think about it. Silence, even for just a few seconds, can feel really uncomfortable, right? It creates this kind of vacuum.
Yeah, like an awkward pause in a conversation.
Exactly. And most people have this natural instinct to fill that void. They'll start talking, sometimes revealing more than they intended.
So you're saying that instead of jumping in with counter-arguments, sometimes the smarter move is to just be quiet and let them talk themselves into a corner.
Precisely. It's about letting the silence work in your favor. But, and this is crucial, silence is only truly effective when combined with active listening.
So not just waiting for your turn to speak, but really tuning into what the other person is saying.
Yes, and even more importantly, what they're not saying. Their tone, their body language, those subtle cues can reveal a lot about their true motivations and concerns.
It's like reading between the lines, picking up on those unspoken signals. Do you have an example of a time when you successfully used this combination of silence and active listening?
Sure. Once I was negotiating a pretty complex business deal, and it was clear the other party was really stuck on a particular point. Instead of battling it out, I just paused and I really focused on what they were saying and how they were saying it.
What happened?
Turns out their hesitation wasn't actually about the point itself, but about a fear they hadn't voiced. Once I understood that underlying fear through their tone and hesitation, we were able to address it directly. It completely changed the game.
Wow, that's a perfect illustration of how active listening can completely shift the dynamic of a negotiation. It's not about being passive. It's about gathering intel, understanding the other side's perspective. Okay, so we've talked about the power of silence and active listening. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of negotiation: striving for those win-win scenarios. Where everyone walks away feeling good about the agreement.
Absolutely. Win-win is so important. And it's not just some fluffy concept. It's a strategy that can lead to more sustainable, mutually beneficial outcomes.
One of the sources we looked at even used Steve Jobs as an example, highlighting how his negotiation skills were key to the success of iTunes.
Right. And Jobs was a master at understanding that a win-win negotiation isn't about just splitting the difference or compromising. It's about getting creative and finding solutions that truly benefit both sides.
So it's about more than just getting what you want. It's about making sure the other side feels good about the agreement too.
Exactly. Think about it like this. Imagine you're negotiating a starting salary for a new job, right? The company might be hesitant to meet your ideal number.
Which happens all the time.
Right. But if you really listen and understand their needs and limitations, you might discover they're open to other benefits like additional vacation time or professional development opportunities.
So it's about thinking outside the box, exploring all the possibilities, not just getting stuck on one specific number.
Exactly. And that's where thorough preparation becomes absolutely crucial. You can't uncover those creative win-win solutions or truly understand the other side's needs without doing your homework.
It's like they say, preparation is key. But when it comes to negotiation, where do you even begin?
Well, a good place to start is by getting crystal clear about your own objective.
Right. What are you hoping to achieve? What are your non-negotiables? Those things you absolutely can't budge on.
Exactly. And on that note, one of the articles we read talked about BAT&A, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Yeah, basically your fallback plan if the deal goes south.
Right. Having a strong BAT&A gives you options, the confidence to walk away if the terms aren't favorable. But remember, it's not enough to just know your own side.
You got to understand what the other party wants, too.
Precisely. Do your research. What are their goals, their constraints, their pain points? The more you know, the better you can anticipate their moves and tailor your approach.
It's like gathering intel before a big meeting, right? Knowledge is power. Speaking of tools, I remember one article mentioned something called a SWOT analysis.
Ah, the SWOT analysis, a classic for a reason.
Can you refresh my memory on how that works?
Sure, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, I'm following.
And it's a fantastic way to get a clear picture of, well, the entire negotiation landscape.
So like a strategic roadmap.
Exactly. You start by listing your strengths. What advantages do you bring to the table?
Okay, makes sense.
Then you identify your weaknesses, areas where you might be vulnerable or could improve.
Right, got to be honest with yourself about those.
Absolutely. Next, you consider opportunities, external factors that could give you an edge.
Interesting. So you're looking beyond just the immediate negotiation itself.
Right. And finally, you outline potential threats, obstacles, or risks you might encounter.
So by going through this SWOT process, you're not just identifying your own strengths and weaknesses, but also those of the other party, and even external factors that could impact the outcome.
Exactly. And that kind of awareness is incredibly valuable.
It's like having a game plan, right?
Yeah.
Knowing the terrain and anticipating potential obstacles.
Precisely. It allows you to negotiate from a position of strength, respond strategically to challenges, and leverage opportunities.
Okay, so we've covered the importance of preparation, understanding our bad 10A, doing our research on the other party, and using tools like the SWOT analysis to gain a strategic advantage.
All essential elements of effective negotiation.
Totally. But there's another layer to this whole negotiation game that we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, and what's that?
Body language. That unspoken language that can sometimes speak louder than words.
Ah, yes. Nonverbal communication is so crucial in negotiation.
Right. Like, think about it. The way you carry yourself, your facial expressions, it all conveys a message.
Absolutely. It can project confidence or uncertainty, trustworthiness, or, well, the opposite.
So how can we make sure our body language is working in our favor? I've heard about power posing. Do I need to strike a pose before walking into a big meeting?
And laughs.
Yeah.
No need for dramatic poses.
Okay, good to know.
It's more about being aware of your posture and presence. For instance, maintaining good eye contact shows you're engaged and trustworthy.
Right. It shows you're listening.
Exactly. And sitting or standing tall with your shoulders back signals confidence.
It's like you're literally and figuratively owning your space.
Exactly. On the other hand, things like fidgeting, crossing your arms defensively, or avoiding eye contact can make you seem nervous, insecure, or even dishonest.
It's like our bodies can betray our true feelings, even when we're trying to project something else.
It's true. And remember, this works both ways. Pay attention to the other person's body language, too.
So are they leaning in, engaged? Or are they closed off, skeptical?
Exactly. Their nonverbal cues can give you valuable insights into their thoughts and feelings, even if they never say a word. It's like learning a secret language, one that's communicated through posture, gestures, expressions.
It's like you're reading between the lines of their words.
Precisely. And that ability to read those cues, to understand the emotional undercurrents in a negotiation, is a key component of emotional intelligence.
Right. It's not just about what they say, but how they say it.
And that can make all the difference in navigating these interactions effectively.
Okay, so we've covered the power of silence, the importance of active listening, understanding nonverbal cues. Now let's talk about the words themselves.
Right, because the language we use, the specific phrases, can also have a huge impact on the direction of a negotiation.
Absolutely. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Exactly. Certain phrases can be incredibly effective at diffusing tension, building rapport, and ultimately steering the conversation in a more positive direction.
So give me an example. What kind of tactical phrases are we talking about here?
Well, one of the phrases that really stood out to me from the research was, "help me understand."
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. It just feels so much more collaborative and less confrontational than saying, "I don't get it," or "you're wrong."
It's subtle, but it can really shift the dynamic.
Because instead of putting the other person on the defensive, you're inviting them to explain their thinking.
Exactly. You're expressing a genuine desire to see things from their perspective, which can go a long way in building rapport and moving towards a mutually agreeable solution.
It's like you're saying, "hey, let's work together on this." Precisely. And another phrase I find very effective is, "what can we do to get closer?"
Ooh, I like that one.
It frames the negotiation as a shared challenge, encouraging a more collaborative approach.
Instead of a battle to be won.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say I've listened attentively, paid attention to their body language, maybe even sprinkled in some of these tactical phrases.
Sounds like you're off to a good start.
But how do I actually seal the deal? What are some effective closing techniques?
Well, one technique I find particularly compelling is the yes ladder technique.
This ladder. Tell me more.
It's based on the idea that getting someone to agree to a series of small things builds momentum towards a larger agreement.
So you're kind of easing them into it.
Exactly. Let's say you're negotiating a freelance contract, for example.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You might start by getting the client to agree on the scope of work, right?
Right, get that clearly defined.
Then you might move on to timelines and deadlines.
Okay.
And finally, you discuss your fees.
So each agreement paves the way for the next.
Precisely. It creates a sense of positive momentum, making that final yes feel like a natural progression rather than this huge hurdle.
I see. So by the time you get to the big ask, it doesn't feel like such a big ask anymore.
Exactly. Another closing technique I find quite effective is called anchoring.
Anchoring. What's that all about?
Well, it's based on the psychological principle that the first number thrown out in a negotiation, whether it's a price or a salary, tends to set the standard for all subsequent discussions.
So if I start by asking for a price that's higher than I realistically expect to get, I'm setting the anchor high.
Exactly. Even if the other party negotiates you down, you're still likely to end up with a better deal than if you had started with a lower anchor.
That's a great strategy, especially for things like salary negotiations where people often undervalue themselves.
Absolutely. Do your research, know your worth, and don't be afraid to aim high.
Love that. Well, we've covered so much ground today, from the power of silence and active listening to the importance of nonverbal communication, tactical phrases, and even closing techniques like the yes ladder and anchoring.
It's been quite a deep dive.
It really has. And you know, what's fascinating to me is how much psychology plays into all of this.
It's true. Negotiation is as much about understanding human behavior as it is about anything else.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know about you, but I feel much more equipped to handle my next negotiation with confidence.
Me too. And that's what it's all about, right? Giving people the tools and strategies they need to navigate these situations effectively.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the art of negotiation. And to everyone listening, remember what we talked about today. Listen actively, communicate clearly, and don't be afraid to negotiate your way to success. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to World and Mind. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others who might find it helpful or inspiring. Remember, every step in the journey matters, and together we can keep exploring new ideas and creating a better world. Until next time, stay curious, stay motivated, and keep growing.